Look at a map of modern Europe. The borders are clean, wrapping neatly around countries like France, Germany, and Italy. But if you rewind to the late 18th century, that neatness completely disappears. The continent was a chaotic patchwork of sprawling empires and tiny independent duchies. Inside these borders, there was rarely a shared culture or language. Take the Habsburg Empire. It contained German-speaking aristocrats, a Hungarian population split between speaking Magyar and a dozen other local dialects, and Polish-speaking elites all living side by side. These millions of people didn't share a common heritage. The only tie binding them together was a forced legal allegiance to a single autocratic emperor. The French philosopher Ernst Renan recognized this later in 1882. He argued that a nation isn't formed by bloodlines, race, or geography. Instead, he called it a daily plebiscite, a direct vote where people consciously choose to maintain a shared solidarity. Because this collective identity didn't exist from time immemorial, it had to be built. Modern nations are not accidents of history. They were deliberately manufactured using a very specific set of tools. The first clear expression of this modern national identity emerged with the French Revolution in 1789. Sovereignty was violently transferred away from a single monarch and handed over to a new body of citizens. To replace the old identity of royal subjects, the revolutionaries deliberately engineered new concepts. They introduced the idea of la patrie, the fatherland, and le citoyen, the citizen, to emphasize a united community with equal rights. They enforced this unity by standardizing physical and cultural symbols. Old regional flags were scrapped for the new tricolor, and local dialects were actively discouraged in favor of Parisian French. This psychological shift proved a shared identity could be drafted and adopted by the masses. It created the political will necessary for a nation to exist. Soon, French armies under Napoleon began moving across Europe. They arrived as conquerors, but they ended up acting as unintentional unifiers. Initial enthusiasm for French liberation often turned sour. As seen in illustrations of French occupation at the time, local populations realized that French administrative rule brought increased taxation, strict censorship, and forced conscription into Napoleon's military campaigns. But along with the military occupation came sweeping legal reforms. This title page belongs to the Civil Code of 1804, commonly known as the Napoleonic Code. It was exported to conquered territories, abolishing feudal privileges and establishing widespread equality before the law. By standardizing laws, weights, and measures across vast swaths of territory, Napoleon accidentally gave historically divided peoples a practical blueprint. They now knew exactly how to operate as a single unified state. For the rising industrial middle classes, the push for national unity was a matter of profit and market efficiency. Let's look at the economic friction of pre-unified Europe. If a merchant wanted to buy cloth, the standard measurement was the L, but an L of textile would get you about 54 centimeters in Frankfurt, 55 in Mainz, and over 65 in Nuremberg. This made trade incredibly tedious. To fix this, Prussia initiated a customs union called the Zollverein in 1834. It abolished tariff barriers between member states and slashed the number of local currencies from over 30 down to just 2. At the exact same time, new technology was arriving. This vintage steam locomotive represents the expanding railway network that physically tied these newly integrated economic zones together, making transport faster and cheaper than ever. Shared economic infrastructure provided the physical reality that turned abstract ideas of flags and language into a permanent feature of the map. This map shows the European borders drawn by conservative powers at the Congress of Vienna in 1815. Following Napoleon's defeat, the old monarchies desperately tried to restore their traditional multinational empires and suppress these new national movements, but their efforts were doomed. The combined forces of an emerging middle class, deep economic integration, and growing liberal nationalism were simply too powerful to contain. Take a look at this 1848 print by Frederick Souriau, visualizing a utopian fantasy, a world of democratic nation-states. Ironically, the people carrying the black, red, and gold flag represent a united Germany that did not legally exist. They were still divided across fragmented principalities. The borders on our modern maps reflect specific industrial revolutions and a conscious collective decision to share a future, rather than any sort of natural geographic inevitability.